Good evening, everybody, or afternoon or morning, wherever you are in the world watching this. Anyway, you're very welcome. Thanks for tuning in to watch us live, and a thank you to those who will watch us on replay, and a thank you to those who prefer to listen. So whichever platform you're on, and I think this tonight we're on. I think we're on the lot of them actually. We're on the Facebook. We're on YouTube, Getter, X, and Rumble, and so pretty much all the platforms. So anyway, thank you very much for tuning in. One of the real pleasures of me doing this, one of the reasons I like to do these live shows, is it gives me a chance to introduce you to people that you may not have been that familiar with, let's say. And it sort of pleases me that I can do that little introduction to you. And so it is with our guest who we're going to bring on in a minute, all the way from East Texas, as you will discover. But just before that, just a reminder, of course, to check out all the stuff that I put out on Substack, on Podbean, as well as what we put out here on the X platform. You know, it's been quite an interesting day here in the UK, and it's been equally interesting across in the US. Here we have Parliament discussing whether or not it should ban halal meat, and a big no to that, to the surprise of absolutely nobody, because they're all a bunch of cards, as we know in Westminster. So we had that big debate going on. We have the BBC scheming up a way whereby you have to pay for it. So all of you people out there who don't watch the BBC and don't pay your BBC license, the BBC's got a cunning plan to make you pay. So we'll talk more about that maybe tomorrow. So we've got all this over this side of the Atlantic. And then what's been going on across the pond? Well, there's quite a lot, actually, as it happens, as is sometimes the way. I mean, it was on Thursday night when we were doing our Thursday show that the Trump-Musk bromance kind of fell apart, and we were able to cover that one live. And as we do this one on a Monday, as I said, things look pretty well. Maybe, I don't know what, fiery, but mostly peaceful. Isn't that what the language they use is? Well, we're going to find out now, because I'm going to bring into the studio now our guest for this evening, and he is Teddy Pierce. Welcome to the stream, Teddy.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolute pleasure to have you. And you know, we're going to we're talking about a lot of stuff actually. But as I say, I wanted to pick your brains on what you see unfolding in California, in LA, and the response to it from the president and from Governor Newsom. And what do you make of all that?
There's a lot to unpack there. I think that the summertime is always riot season for the Democrats.
Yeah, it is.
The
Yeah,
weather gets nicer.
yeah.
I think what we're seeing though is something that was planned and obviously is being orchestrated. The response that I see from Trump, I really appreciate, because I believe that he thought in 2020 in Kenosha and Minneapolis that if he sent the National Guard in, if he really cracked down, that would reflect negatively on him. And so I'm glad to see the response here. But just in short, you have people who you have Americans who hate America so much that they're willing to stand shoulder to shoulder with people who have no interest in assimilating and have no interest in becoming American, but to just take advantage of the economics, you know, and the benefits that they receive from living here illegally or in a dodgy immigration status, which the Democrats really facilitated under Biden.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, you put out a tweet earlier on, which I saw and which I really loved. If we can just bring it up, you know, I know you don't want to be, but you are at war. Better start acting like it. And LA in flames. I mean, you're just being realistic, as far as I can see. These people hate you, and they despise your country. Why the hell are they there? Well, we know why they're there, but they shouldn't be, should they?
Absolutely not. And really too, that this is this is demonstrable that we're dealing with a political movement of progressivism that has really come to body snatch the Democratic Party. They're certain
Mm,
darlings of the media and the thought leaders within the party, and they have no interest in living in peace with us, right? It's this
no.
very obvious showing that
Mm.
either their ideology is going to win or we're going to take our country back.
And what do you think will happen to California? Do you think it can continue? Like, because we talked about before we came on air, the whole sanctuary city, sanctuary state. And I just believe that's completely untenable. What do you think?
I really do believe that it is, like I said before, the whole concept of the sanctuary city or the sanctuary state is to say we'll play along and we'll play nicely, unless that's inconvenient to our political ends, and then
Mm,
we just are
yeah.
going to disregard the social contract. And that obviously is not tenable. Where the future of the Democrat Party, of course, the California Democrat machine is very strong. It's
Yeah.
probably the New York machine is the only thing that rivals it in power. So
Mm,
there are a lot of they have a lot of outsized influence on the Democratic Party generally, which is why things are so crazy out there. They're the
yeah.
leading edge of the spear there. But
Mm,
I
yeah.
don't know that
Yeah.
obviously this is a really good chance to wake people up who have been voting Democrat because they just believe that they're the more compassionate party or the
Mm,
gentler party. Maybe this will do something to wake them up. We saw a turn in California. Several districts went Republican that had
yeah.
previously been Democrat. So we
Yeah.
started to see a little bit of turn in 2024. But how crazy do they have to be to really wake people up who just kind of go through their day and they don't want to be politicos?
Yeah, well, when you see some of the images coming out of the area, LA County, it's shocking. I mean, we've got guys with Mexican flags standing on top of burning cars. I understand actually what they were doing was they were calling, isn't it, that you've got the self-driving taxi cars, and they called them and they burnt them.
Yeah.
Just yeah.
Yeah, and you can see the political machinations of this. It's very akin to Marxism, critical theory, deconstructionism.
Mm,
I alluded earlier this week. I said if
yeah.
you want to understand what's happening in LA right now, this is controlled demolition.
Yes,
It's
definitely.
destruction in real time, but it,
Yeah.
it certainly has a plan driving behind it.
Yeah, it hasn't. I mean, and when you consider that, I mean, I don't know who they'll have in 2029, the Democrats. Will it be, AOC, or will it be Newsom? But I mean, he's right up there potentially as one of their, and yet his state is, on fire, and he's blaming Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, Trump's. I'll tell you what you said there is very shrewd, though. This has come at the right time in the presidential cycle. Trump can be tough, and he's got nothing to lose. He can be as tough as it, and he should be as tough. But it does make me wonder, I mean, is California, is it irretrievable? Can it be saved? Because you've got a large, I mean, it's like an insurrectionist state, which is sounds mad when you say it, but it is. I put it to
Right.
you. Yeah. Yeah.
That has to be the answer as to whether we're going to be saved, or whether California can be redeemed at this point. They'll have to be completely disabused of this progressive ideology,
Mm.
uh, and the Democratic Party is going to have to either uh, either just jump on the bandwagon, right? That's kind of seems like the
Mm.
inevitable conclusion,
Mm. Mm.
or we're going to have to see Democrats and Democrat voters really en masse start saying we're not going to tolerate this anymore. You
Mm.
can't just throw these crazy woke candidates out there saying the most outlandish things. We're just not going to support you anymore. So I think
Yeah.
more than anything, that's probably what we'll see is just a slow backing away. May not become Republicans, but
No, but they move it. Yeah, but sometimes that's how these things can be. In a way, it might be good because it might waken some of them up, because where they're headed is just hell. They're just
Yes.
I mean, when you look back to what California was, you go back to the 1960s, 70s. It had an image then, and you look at what it's become. Teddy, it's a bit like, I remember being in San Francisco in about 2005, and I had my family with me, and it was okay, it was fine. Fisherman's Wharf was good. Went back 10 years later, I'll never go back. It was grim. The drugs, the whole scene was grim, and like that's how places can change quite quickly, really. And obviously California's changed massively. I saw Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator, being interviewed here the other day, yesterday, and it's hard to imagine at one point like he was a Californian governor.
Yeah, and he was allowed to be a Republican as a
Yeah,
Republican.
yeah, that's right. In fact, and Ronald Reagan himself held political office in California. It's just
Mhm.
amazing. And now you've got these absolute freaks in charge who seem to delight in provocation and testing President Trump. The other thing is, do you think there may be? I mean, I think you've sort of answered this one. There may be more riots in other American cities as we go through summer 2025. I'm not sure this will be the last one.
I don't think so. I believe you're right. We'll continue to see this, but the major catalyst for this was that ICE entered LA. And then
Yeah.
obviously ICE is there, but they really refocused some
Mm,
serious efforts. So I think that we'll continue to see that in other Democrat strongholds.
mm.
It's an urban machine.
It
You can
is.
almost bet that the vast majority of Democrat voters are living in they're densely populated areas. So
Yeah.
I expect to see this in at least in Chicago and New York,
Mm.
probably other larger urban centers as well.
I have to say, I've been very impressed with the response, not just of President Trump, but people like Kash Patel, pretty robust. I think Pete Hegseth as well. So from what I can see, that the team that Trump has around him in Trump 2.0 era seems to be what we need, as in they're
Yeah.
not going to take any prisoners, which they shouldn't.
Exactly. That was one of Trump's major Achilles heels is when he got elected the first time,
Yeah.
he assumed that the DC apparatus, the swamp, was going to at least accept the fact that he was president and that
Yeah.
he was the Republican candidate and that they were going to uh, let him be president and let him take his agenda forward. It, just we can see how that ended up,
Mm,
but
mm.
this time around, yes, it's been very, very different. Really glad with the appointments, and it does seem like they're going to go no nonsense here. And this is Trump's second term; he's not going to run for reelection, and
No,
so
no.
he's got nothing to lose in that regard.
No, yeah, I just find watching California and watching this latest set of riots, it's so interesting because actually, and then this is the broader perspective. The swamp, the globalist forces in play in LA and elsewhere. They're in play across the world. Now, when we were putting this together a week or so ago, whenever it was, back then, well, one of the big stories was what had just happened in Poland, because
Mhm.
in Poland, I mean, here in UK/Europe, I mean, we're not allowed really to have, the people have to vote the way that our swamp wants them to vote, and we'll talk about that in context of Davos and all the rest of it. But Poland were really naughty. They held a presidential election, and narrowly, they didn't vote the right guy in, did they? Tell us what happened there, Teddy.
Yeah, well, Donald Trump represents, we say it's America first,
Yeah,
but it is a sovereignty movement. And I think that other people around the world are gaining some courage, maybe because of the battles that he's gone through, and now he's back in power.
yeah,
You're seeing many different sovereignty movements come and challenge this, what I like to call the liberal world order. that's just ruled
Yes.
over the West and really over
Yeah.
the world for the last century. And we're getting to this point, and it's a breaking point, and it's designed, the chaos is certainly designed to bring us to this
Yes.
point,
I agree. Yeah.
to adopt these very crazy ideas. But the liberal malaise that we've lived in, it was the napping blanket that was over us, kind of lull us to sleep into this sense of comfort that we
Mm.
could agree to disagree, and we
Yeah.
marched to this precipice. And so, I'm glad to see that. I think Maloney in Italy is doing a good job. Malay in Argentina,
Yeah.
uh, and you're seeing, and then in Poland as well, you're seeing these movements of people saying, uh, we're not isolationists, we're not nationalists, but we want to preserve our identity. And of course, they're lambasted for that. But really,
Yeah.
I hope it's a waking up of people to say, like, wait a minute, I'm losing my country, and I'm losing my ability to affect my identity and my country's identity.
Absolutely. Well, in this, in if like in the case of Poland in particular, like that was, I thought the Polish people were pretty sensible folks. And then just recently, the unbelievably awful Donald Tusk, who was a key architect in the European Union, which is again part of the global swamp, he got himself he got himself again, I think, narrowly elected as prime minister. And so the deal was that in order to finish off Poland, they needed to then get in place a president, because that's their structure, president, prime minister, that would be congenial. And it didn't happen. So they got Carol Nawrocki instead, which has been hilarious. Because honestly, if you'd have seen the UK coverage of this, BBC, they were virtually in tears. They were crying, black armbands, solemn music on the hour every hour, because it didn't work out the way that they wanted. The subversion of democracy, Teddy, has been so global that when something like this happens, like you get a Maloney in Italy, or like now you've got Nawrocki in Poland, it's brilliant, because, or Viktor Orban, as well. These guys are clearly pretty much aligned with Trump. There's a clear, it may just be a desire to sustain sovereignty and patriotism in that particular country, but you can see the thin line that connects these guys as they stand against the global swamp.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You're alluding to what I talk about often, which is where the political polarity that we feel in the world, the cultural divides, those types of things, especially here in America, where
Mm.
divided between, uh, uh, for lack of a better term, an America First movement against progressivism, and of course, there's a lot of gray area in the middle, but those seem to be
Yeah,
the two extremes.
yeah.
But you're dealing with an ideological divide that the differences run down to the roots. The very first things, the first premises that these ideologies are operating from, they're antithetical to each other. And
Mm.
so that's what we're seeing. And what I like to say here in America is, it's we the people versus the establishment. Those who benefit from the establishment, who feel that the establishment is beneficial to America, those are more of the globalist types, or the Davos crowd.
Mm.
And they're not, just like, well, the governments of the West are not serving the people that they claim to be ruling over.
Right.
And
That's
so
right.
we're dealing with this huge political divide, and it's a cultural divide, but because ultimately it's an ideological and philosophical divide that, like I said, goes all the way down so deep to those first premises. They're operating from two different worldviews, and
Mm.
that's the clash point that we're getting to in the world today, is that one of those is going to win, right? And we're going to live in one future or the other. And I certainly
Mm.
know which side I want to fall on.
Oh yeah, same here. I mean, I think I saw Elon Musk put up a tweet there in the last day or so saying that it's almost like the world's divided into two groups. There's the people who watch mainstream legacy TV and legacy media, and that's their worldview. And then there's us, the people who, inhabit the alternative media, the digital space, the social media platforms, and we see things just incredibly radically different. I mean, it's a chasm. Are the two things even reconcilable? I'm not sure. What do you think?
I don't think so. And
Mm,
you mentioned the mainstream media. That is that's the PR firm of the globalists, right?
yes.
Any of those legacy media groups
Mm,
are building and crafting that narrative, and they've had such narrative control for so long.
yeah.
Uh, and the alternative media space, again, I like the way you said that about the thin line that connects all of us together,
Mm,
because it's true. We're finding ourselves on the opposite side of the divide, right? We're finding ourselves in a ideological war, whether we want to be in that
yep.
fight or not. And
No,
so that's,
yep.
yeah, it's not designed to be reconcilable. It's designed to rip the heart out of the West and for it to be reimagined in these people's image.
Yeah, well, that's why I thought the tweet that you put out, you don't want, we don't want to think we're at war, but we are sort of certainly an ideological war. And
Mhm.
actually, it sometimes maybe it even goes beyond that. And being naive about these things, Teddy, is wrong. In fact, I think they count on our naivety and our reasonableness. I'm not really interested in being that particularly reasonable on things that are non-negotiable, like
Uh-huh.
our sovereignty, like our ability to have freedoms and liberties. They're not negotiable. I'm not, but this is where it's problematical, because then you get to the likes of, say, Davos, you get to the World Economic Forum, you get to the European Union, you get to the UN. They're all, that's the enemy right there and straight in plain sight, and yet the media endlessly sells them as they're forces for good. How could you not like them, Teddy?
Yeah. Well, and the other big thing is that they're crafting this narrative, and the purpose is to sell it, right? Not only sell it as benevolent and choose
Jen.
the good guys and the bad guys,
Yeah.
but to then make us believe that it's just the inevitable march of time and future and technology,
Yeah.
and so why would you even fight it? It's just going to come to your door whether you want to or not. And
Yeah.
so it takes voices saying, "Hey, this is not just reality playing out in real time. This is a story, and you're being told a story,
It's a
and we
narrative.
can we can make our own story in turn."
Well, I think one of the great things is that when Donald Trump got reelected for the second time, third time, but anyway, definitely
Debatable.
twice, right? Yeah, I know. But when he got reelected, I think that did send hope around the world beyond the bar, the limits of the United States, because here in the UK, sort of dissidents like us, we take huge comfort from that, because we've got a globalist government here in the UK, which
Mhm.
is a real problem, and we see it in France and we see it in Australia. You guys see it up in Canada. You've got Mark Carney looking down at you,
Yeah.
but it's like Trump's the beacon. And which is why, actually, I have to say, you see that online spat with Musk. Even though I love Elon Musk, but honestly, there's too much writing in this one to be having that kind of public spat, or at least that's what I think. What did you make of it, Teddy? The Trump Musk online warfare last week.
Yeah, I think I had the same sentiment as everybody, and I didn't want to see mom and dad fighting again. That was,
Yeah, yeah, I get it.
it's yeah, it's unfortunate, but I mean, everybody. I think it's good to take a step back and remember that Elon didn't even endorse Trump until July before the November election.
True.
Uh, there's a little bit of animosity, but also too, there's an off ramp for this, and it's better for it to happen now than say in midterm election year or a major
Oh, I think
election
so.
year.
Yeah, I was listening to my namesake JD Vance, and JD Vance, he did an interview I was listening to, and he was basically saying what you've just said, that like, without getting into all the ins and outs of it, it would be better if we just moved on. And I can understand Elon Musk's frustration, by the way. I mean, I'm a businessman, or I was, so I understand all my life how business works. But politics, Teddy, doesn't work the same. It's like such a basic thing, but it doesn't work the same way. Trump gets that, even though
Mhm.
he was a businessman himself, and whatnot. And I think
Right.
Elon just, yeah, it was awkward. Let's put it like that. It was awkward. But you're talking about, there are great forces lined up against us. Now, you've got a book. We'll just bring up, Teddy, your book. I want to just give it a plug here, called Dethroning Davos. Uh, yeah, dethrone Davos, save America. Punchy title and to the point, I have to say. So just talk us through what you're trying to get out in that book, Teddy, which is, by the way, on Amazon if you want to go and check it out, folks.
Yeah, my thesis in the book got. I will say, as I'm going through the writing process, I got more than I bargained for,
I bet
and
you.
chasing down some different rabbit holes and whatnot. But
Yeah.
really, it's to more of this conversation we're talking about. We're dealing with a level of divide that goes so deep. It goes past the political talking points. It goes past cultural fads and whatnot.
Yeah.
And as you really start to peel back those layers and see what's driving all of these things,
Mm,
uh, for me, this is what I've seen for the last 15 years is the ideological lockstep on the globalist side is it's too consistent for it to just be this organic thing that everybody's tied into.
mm.
It's the level of discipleship
Yes.
and
Yeah.
commitment, no
Yeah, I
matter
agree.
how crazy the ideas get, is to me speaks of a bigger system at play that's driving that forward. It's not, again, what they're selling us is this inevitable march of the future. And
Mm.
so what I really wanted to try to tackle in the book is taking the Sun Tzu art of war approach,
Yes.
understand your
Yep.
enemy and
Yep.
understand yourself and understand what it's going to take to be the resistance movement against this globalism that's just marching forward and controlling so much of economics and world politics and
Mm.
cultures throughout the world.
Yeah, because here on this side of the Atlantic, I mean, the whole Davos thing, it's massively influential. I mean, we've got a king here. We got a king. You guys got rid of one of them, but we got a king, King Charles. And I mean, he was one of the first to rock up and at Davos to stand beside our friend Klaus Schwab and talk about how great the reset the great reset was going to be. And you just think, my God, it's it is like the swamp is everywhere. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is, Teddy. Especially here, you guys maybe not just as bad as us, I think, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, that is what we're seeing, and where the swamp really comes into play and has immense power
Mm,
is like you alluded to in the European Union, the
yeah,
United Nations, these overarching organizations that can decide certain regulatory policies
right.
or climate change initiatives and things like that. And
Yeah.
we certainly have that in spades here inside the DC Beltway.
Mm,
Within the ring of Washington DC, you have millions of government bureaucrats. And it's what I like to call the fourth branch of government. We're supposed to only have three branches, but it's
you've
the
had to get a
fourth.
fourth one. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so you see these lifelong appointed bureaucrats. They watch presidents come and go. The
Mm,
intelligence communities here as well, CIA and the NSA,
yeah,
and of course the Five Eyes organization,
yeah.
which is multiple intelligence agencies. But you see these people. They watch presidents come and go. They watch prime ministers come and go from all over the world, and it
Mm,
seems like they're the ones who are deciding our foreign policy for us. And all of these, and then of course domestically, so much of the of regulatory law here in America comes from those alphabet soup agencies. They
mm,
don't come from Congress where they're supposed to come from,
mm,
and the lack of accountability that our real government that's outlined in the Constitution, they've lost the power to hold any of these regulatory agencies accountable, and I
yeah.
think that's part of the plan.
Yeah, oh, I agree. And that's happened slowly. That's happened
Mhm.
over the decades. And it's the same here as well. In the UK, we have like the permanent civil service, which sits in the background behind the governments, but it controls everything, because as you rightly said, Teddy, just like in the States, these guys, these officials, watch the politicians come and the politicians go. And sometimes I think one of the weaknesses we have in our democratic system is we've got very short electrical election cycles. Like you got midterms, 4-year cycle, half year, 2 years in midterm. We've got like 5-year governments here. And that means everything's so reactive. That's why I totally appreciate the challenges that President Trump has, because it's so not easy. I mean, we're talking here in June 2025. You're going to have midterms. I think, was it November of 26?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
so all the politicians who are going to be up then are going to be fit. They're fixated on that, and that's the frustration I have with politics. It's hard to think big and think. And this is where Elon thinks very big, but politics is not only are you fighting the global swamp, but you're doing it in like very short election cycles, which is hard. Let's face it.
Yeah, it kneecaps anybody again who could hold the swamp accountable in any way.
Mm,
Um, and of course, the same people who are in ideological lockstep with the regulators, the lobbyists, and the
yeah.
money that's flowing through Washington, D.C. Is tied to those campaign dollars and what they're going to campaign or not campaign on as well. So
Mm,
we're there's a cartoon called Schoolhouse Rock, and everybody in America knew Schoolhouse Rock, and it taught you about the government and how it works. And there's a
mm,
famous song, "I'm just a bill up on Capitol Hill," and he's going to
yeah,
go through the process. And I often joke and half lament on X often that I don't, and we all learned how the government worked from Schoolhouse Rock, but I don't think that the government that's in charge today consulted that video as they go about their business.
yeah. I mean, and then there's all this the internecine things, stuff that goes on as well. Like if you take the Republican Party, and there's the bits of it there's the bits that I like, which is kind of the MAGA bits, and then there's the horrific bits. The Lindsey Grahams of this world,
Oh,
and yet they're so subtle, because Lindsey Graham, I mean, I believe he's working against Trump. He certainly was when he was in Ukraine there the other week. But
hmm.
then he comes on and he pledges his undying loyalty to Trump. And that's why it's so hard, because the people that you think you can trust, maybe you can't trust them. In fact, you shouldn't trust people like him. What do you think?
Yeah, he's not to be trusted.
Oh,
That's for sure.
snake
But
oil on legs.
yes,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
and he's not alone as the Liz Cheney and
yeah,
Mitt Romneys of the world, and these
yeah.
people. And I think that the Republican Party didn't understand the level of control that sometimes it's called the uniparty in
Uniparty. Yep.
Washington, D.C.
Yeah, get that. Yep.
No major foreign policy difference between George Bush and Barack Obama, right? There's really no change, and I think that we as Republican voters just really didn't realize how much controlled opposition was within the Republican Party.
Mm,
Of
mm.
course, Donald Trump blew that up,
He did.
and I
Yeah,
hope that
yeah.
I hope that the voters now are awake enough to primary people like Lindsey Graham and just not tolerate this. Anybody who's willing to go play footsie with the globalists is not your friend. We need to know that for sure.
Well, that's right. Because one of the other, like, I don't know what you feel about this, but on the globalist sort of side of things, when I look at the whole Ukraine Russia scenario, and Zelensky, always the greatest leader ever, and you look at the sort of the almost suicidal desire that the likes of NATO has, and the West, to actually bring about a World War III scenario, a continental nuclear exchange. And you think, my God, these people, like they're really evil. I think, Teddy, that's my way of looking at them. What do you think of that? They would contemplate that horrific, potential, catastrophic, world-ending exchange. They would quite
Yeah.
like it, I think, if they could get it.
Well, yeah, that goes back to what we were talking about before, as far as
Yeah.
these people's ideology, their philosophy. And I talk about in the book quite a bit the concept of relativism, and of course that's a dusty old philosophy word, but it's an ideology that's built on the denial of truth. It's focused on power.
Mm.
It's gonna easiest way to describe it is it's a bully that knocks everything down, all the social mores and morals and right and wrong, all of that gets cast to the side, and it's whoever can stand and be the strong man, right? Nietzsche's
Yeah.
Übermensch,
Yeah.
Superman,
Yeah.
and will his own power. And that's really what we're seeing on the side of the globalists. They're all godless. They're all atheists. They deny the
Yep.
existence of God. And of
Yep.
course, it's all, certainly in our Declaration of Independence, we said we are endowed by our Creator with
Yes.
inalienable rights. And
Mm.
by God, the government can't take them away from us.
Mhm.
And that
Mhm.
sentiment is shared, I know, throughout the West. But this idea that we are all accountable to God, and we have certain obligations to each other, and certain individual
Yeah.
sovereignty and rights and freedoms, and that's that's the fundamental basis for people of goodwill who believe in right and wrong and morals, and want to build a framework out of that. But
Mm.
that's the antithesis of that is what is the underlying thoughts and ideas that drive this globalism. And so that's why you see they just nonchalantly talk about population control, managing
Oh
people
yeah.
as though they're barcodes. And so
Yeah.
that's it becomes the banality of evil. This
Yeah.
idea just becomes managed. It
Yeah.
just and it becomes managers managing humanity, and the people just following orders. But
Mhm.
that totally fits. That has its own internal logic in the framework of the globalist, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. Is
Mm.
they have power, they control the food system, they control the health system. You live in the pod and eat the bugs, as the joke goes.
Yeah, yeah. You will eat the bugs. You will eat the yeah, yeah. I just see them as like godless nihilists.
Yes.
They but we're not only are they godless. I think they hate the notion of like Christian faith. I think they really hate it, and you can tell that actually. But there's very few of them really profess faith. Certainly when you get into the likes of the Davos crowd. I mean,
Right.
they might be worshiping somebody else in Davos, but I'm not sure it's the same person that we are. So I think you're right. But it's scary that the people who exercise all this power can be like this, and that's the scale of the battle that is being fought. And you're in the front line where you're, in the States. I think, as I say, those of us in Europe have to hope that by success in the States, we will be able to start to roll it back here in sort of the European countries as well. I've
Mhm.
got to say, I was so shocked during COVID. Well, not to, we have to be careful what we say about COVID because we're on YouTube and we know it's totally, definitely everything that they said. But
Of course.
it totally is, Teddy. No doubt about that. But it was, the way that power was exercised so tyrannically, and
Mhm.
from New Zealand to down Australia up to Canada.
Yeah.
I mean, probably one of the better places actually was the US, where you at least had some freedom, something. And that really shocked me that those nations operated in lockstep, same agenda, same narrative, treated their people like sheep, and
Mhm.
delighted in it. They were happy.
Yeah, well, there was peace and order, and the trains ran on time, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. It all worked. It
So,
was so functional. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
For example, like you've got, but it's all linked because, like, for example, Jacinda Ardern, who was the Prime Minister, I think, of New Zealand at the time. I
mhm.
mean, she's a protege of the Tony Blair International School. She worked for Blair back about 2010. So you can sort of see, just like I think there's healthy links that connect us guys. There's a dark force that connects all these people, and they
Mhm.
say stuff that like is horrific, but it just comes out of them so naturally. As you said, I love your term, the banality of evil. That's exactly
Mhm.
what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, and that is it's interesting to see. We have this globalism, it's a corrupt system. And that you said about what they worship in Davos.
Yeah,
In the book, I say, there you can go down many rabbit holes about who and what these people worship,
yeah,
but
yeah,
ultimately they all worship at the devil's altar. And
yeah,
what I mean by that is that the devil was the first relativist, right? He rejected God and the beatific vision and set out to make a kingdom unto himself. And of course,
yeah,
that's hell. Uh, and so in the book, I say that you can believe what you want to, and it may totally, all of the QAnon stuff may be absolutely true. I don't know. But the devil's back is turned to his followers because they're all facing that anti-God, that antithetical altar of relativism. This idea that I can will reality into existence. I can reject God, I can
yeah.
reject goodness, and I can make a kingdom unto myself.
Well, I mean, I think a great example of that, Teddy, is if you take the entire, let's talk about the trans movement for a moment,
Oh yeah.
which is fundamentally predicated on biological unreality. No one has ever, will ever actually change biological gender. You can do things, you can have surgeries, put wigs on, all that stuff. But it's like the lie has been sold. It's such a simple lie, but it's effective lie. And actually, under
Mhm.
Biden, I mean, anyone that criticized it was going to be in big trouble. And here in the
Right.
UK as well, you criticize it, Teddy, and you're not going to be invited to too many parties. Let's put it like that. So it is just like it's almost like a satanic lies are sold very effectively. But I suppose that's what they are.
Well, you're exactly right, and it's again going back to that, it's inverting the Western world
Yeah,
order, and
yeah, yeah.
it's twisting and bending it, selling it as benevolence, but that's really what it's doing is upending any sense of stability and history that we have in the West. And that was a big thing for me in writing the book, is saying you have to understand, you have to be able to get in the mind of these people and understand what you're up against, because the madness is not going to stop. There's never going to be a point where they stop turning over these crazy ideas, and as soon as the trans things normalize, they're going to go on to the next frontier. And
I think.
it's yeah, go
Yep.
ahead.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, you used one of my favorite words, inversion. And I think
Mhm.
if anyone's been awake over the last 4 or 5 years, they'll realize that, well, inversion's always been a tactic, but I think it's become so obvious now. Well, maybe to us, but then I'm thinking, yeah, but hang on a second. If I'm sitting watching mainstream media, inversion is just presented as totally normal. I mean, we've got, I'm sure you have as well. Well, I think you definitely do in your sort of part of the world. We got like TV shows that have got these trans individuals on, and it's all, yeah, it's all fun. It's all so brat to celebrate basic an illusion, where people are
Yeah.
sold illusions and then they buy the illusions. It horrifies me.
Yeah, and the veneer that's placed over that obviously is, that if you oppose for reasonable or logical grounds, it,
Yes,
it it can't be that you're being reasonable and asking other people to be reasonable. It's because you're the most evil, terrible, bigoted person who wants to steal that person's happiness. And
that's right.
so,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
that's the power of the argument.
oh, it is. And be kind. They use the language. It's always the language. Be kind. I mean, these
Hmm.
people, we all be kind to each other. But no, we shouldn't tolerate insanity. Just, I mean, frequently I've argued the case that I respect other people's points of view. And look, it's not for me to tell anyone else. It's not my position to do that. But as I once observed during a BBC program back in the days when they let me on, and they were talking about the transgender thing. And my view was, look, if somebody wants to call themselves, Samantha, and even if it's a man, right? He wants to call himself Samantha, that's fine by me. But he's not female, and I'm not going to ever accept that because I'm not going to be swallowing convenient lies. Just like when you pick
Hmm.
your other topics, climate change, you pick your topic, and you're being asked continually till the truth's inverted, and then sold to us as lies. But here's a question for you. I see Ray here on the stream says, what do you reckon to this one? The Davos ultimate goal is the forced implementation of mandatory digital ID that must be carried out at all times, CBDCs, and the geofencing of our everyday movements and transactions. Well, Ray, I kind of go with you. What do you think, Teddy? Where do you stand
Yeah.
on that?
Well, the only correction I would make to that is they don't want you to carry the ID. They would rather have it under your skin.
Implanted. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Get your Neuralink. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but
Mm.
that really is the goal, and it's to have a mandatory United Nations and for all of the governments across the world to be these
Yep.
heavy top-down bureaucracies that can enforce the will of the rule by expert class that's above the UN, and so
Yes.
that they can exact their vision. And there will be no East and West Berlin. There will be no wall to climb over.
No.
That
No.
in their framework, that's what they want it to be, and they want this ultimate soft coup where maybe we feel like psych patients slowly going crazy, but we
Mm.
hold it together enough so that the countries remain the same, the leadership remains the same, and people in 100 years will talk about how not much has changed, and but uh,
Yeah.
the
Mm.
world will be reimagined in their image, and there will be nothing economically, politically, or culturally that they can't put their thumb on the scale and affect.
One of the things that kind of emphasizes that that could be possible is when you look at how people behaved during the COVID scenario. And I use my terms advisedly. Scenario YouTube, and but I like suddenly 80% of the population just click your finger and they just went with what they were told, obeyed.
Mhm.
And that's before there was this ability to, sort of have mandatory digital control over them, which is, I think, what Ray is talking about. You can sort of see a scenario where, I don't know what you think, like three-quarters of the population are always going to be sheep.
I think you're right, and that it's got to be baked into the equation. In the book, I say that we are
Mm,
dealing with a two-front war. We're obviously fighting this narrative of globalism,
yep,
but we're fighting against the great disaffected middle, and that's the middle of the country who wants to live in a sane world where
yep,
they're safe and
yep,
they want things to just function. And
yes.
so I don't begrudge people who don't want to do what I do, get in the political space every day, but we do have
Yeah.
to have that positive vision, and I talk about that in the last part of the book.
Mm,
Leave people on a hopeful note of saying we have to be a positive voice to reclaim our shared humanity and our Western tradition, to
mm.
reconnect with the things that made Western civilization great to begin with, and
Well,
um,
yeah,
and
that's
yeah,
it's a very good point, Teddy, because Western civilization, it has been great. It's achieved tremendous things across a whole diverse range of, of areas of culture, and whatnot. And we shouldn't lose track of that. But they've been dismantling that. Like, let's be honest. It's like that's why I think one of the most important things is history. History's been, as in many regards, has been rewritten or erased when it doesn't suit them, and that's why I encourage everyone, to go and find out for yourself about stuff, educate yourself, because certainly in the States, you guys have got a problem with your state sort of school system, university system. It's a horror show you've got.
yeah. That is one of the things I tried not to get too exact on policy or be too prescriptive on exact
Yeah,
policies in
yeah.
the book, but that is one of the things I talked about is dismantling this regulatory state, because we've built this thing over the last 100 years, and the Department of Education is going away now. Hopefully, they'll be able
Hopefully,
to do that.
yeah.
Uh, but it's all tied to government dollars and government initiatives and programs and things like that.
Mm,
And the states were never meant to operate in the way that they're being operated now, which
mm.
is on high from DC telling all of us how our kids are going to be educated. And the last part of that is just completely pulling the plug on the university system being able to have subsidized government student loans or anything like that. The
Yeah,
government
yeah.
has to be disconnected from the university system, and a lot of the craziness will have to go away. They can't hire all those DEI people with
But
lower budgets.
it's like a cancer, isn't it? It's like a cancer that spreads from the government down into the universities,
Mm-hmm.
and we have it here as well till a degree. Maybe not just as an extreme, but it's still bad enough. I mean, I am always reminded of the horrible reality that the university that I went to, a long time ago, the vice chancellor of that university is currently a certain Hillary Clinton. So
Oh wow.
yeah, well, yeah. So it just shows you, the globalists' reach is it's everywhere. It really is. Even in something as innocuous as who's the vice chancellor of Queen's University Belfast, which is where I went to. She it's her. Like,
Oh,
her, and oh my God, Hillary Clinton could be around the corner.
yeah, I
But
have no information on the Clintons or
no, 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 no.
just
I
I
just
want to
want
say
to.
that on record.
I want to make that clear as well, Ted. Yeah, we would like to be here for next week as well. But yeah, I mean, but as you said, there's all these things that we need to kind of reverse and fight back. But I think, and again, want to be positive on this one, and think it's important, as you are in the book, that I do feel that there's more people are becoming aware that things aren't right, and we need to fix stuff. And that's probably why Donald Trump's in the White House, to be honest, because that seemed to be something that's just organic in American sort of psyche. So the West, the coastal elites still live in la la land, but a lot of ordinary Americans do seem to connect to Donald Trump's kind of common sense view on a lot of these issues.
You're right, and there's the same swell of support with Reagan as well, and you have
Yeah, yeah,
the real sense that certainly for my entire political lifetime, I've never, I've voted Republican, but I never felt like even the Republican candidate, the
mm,
Republican candidate that could be the president or the one they would allow to be president.
yeah,
Uh, Even then, it was kind of a plug your nose and vote for them, uh, kind
yeah,
of better than the alternative, right?
yeah,
And so
yeah.
you're exactly right. Donald Trump is he's a he's a solution to a symptom, that it's a
Mm,
symptom of a larger problem in American politics, and just feeling like our tax dollars flowed into Washington D.C. and there were no real benefits that ever came back to us.
oh, yeah.
There was
People,
always money to send overseas. There was always money to throw at the next global conflict.
mm,
And so when Donald Trump said, "I'm going to run as a Republican and I want to represent the American people," that resonated in a real way. And I will say the funniest thing is, his famous statement. It's absolutely true. It's becoming truer by the day when he said, they're not after me. They're
yeah,
after you, and I just happen to be standing in the way." And
yeah.
I'm glad he's there.
Oh, I agree. I mean, one of my hopes would be that we've got Donald Trump, by the grace of God, in power to 2029. I hope. I think JD Vance might make a. He's a much younger man, but from what I've heard him speak, I mean, Trump's a one-off. There's never going to be another Trump, just the way it is. But JD Vance seems pretty sharp and pretty clear, and maybe even a bit more bullish than Trump on some issues. So would you have high hopes for him? What's your view on JD Vance?
Yeah, I think that Trump did pick the best possible candidate, and
Mm,
there were a lot of horses in that race,
sure.
and
Yeah.
I was looking at different people as well, but I have been uh, just blown away. I'm very impressed with JD Vance, and I will gladly vote for him in 2028. So
There's something about President Vance appeals to me, Teddy, but I can't think what it is beyond the fact that it's got a nice ring to it. And also because his family can be traced back to my part of the world. So
oh,
I'm putting an early claim in, by the way, just can I make this absolutely clear, to Jetty. But yeah, I mean, it's all about effective leadership and people that can, politicians and others like yourself, and who can show people that there are ways to move forward and to actually win it, because it is about winning. That's why I want a complete victory. I don't want sort of a slugged out sort of compromise. I don't want that. We have to win this, or there won't be a future, because it's that serious.
Absolutely. Then I make that case in the book. This is we're dealing with the end of this liberal age. This liberalism that we've lived under
Mm,
was never meant to survive, and it led
mm,
us to believe that we could live in this wishy-washy position with one foot in either camp. And
mm.
that's quickly, the two ideologies are separating so fast. And it's going to be, in the book I say, whose future do you want to live in? Because you're going to have to choose. We've been sitting here long enough, and the decision point is coming.
Although I see again a point that I see there, which is quite a good point, that young people are the most oblivious to creeping totalitarianism, because they've been brainwashed, obviously, through the education system. And I think there's some truth. I don't think it's all young people, but more young people than I would want. I mean, they just, they're obsessed in their phones, and they're not aware. A lot of them aren't aware. What do you think about that?
I think you're right. The one of the things that I see, I'm a older millennial, and we came up in a time
Yeah,
where we knew that everything on TV was fake, and we were being sold a pack of lies.
yeah, good.
And
Yeah.
so I don't know how that translates to the younger generations, who grew up on an iPhone, and
Mm.
we'll see. But I think that I think that the LA riots, the continued just gender craziness, and all of these things, I do see that the youth are pushing back against that, even if it's just youthful resistance, in general.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I thought I saw a statistic. I'm not sure if it was for the UK or the US, but it was saying that the millennial youth, the younger ones anyway, they more of them were going to church or had found a sort of a faith,
Mhm.
unlike the previous generations. So I've got a question. My friend Chris, hello Chris, says if he's from Canada, ask him if he thinks Pierre, what's his name, Poilievre was a shell who threw the election. Well, no, he's from he's from East Texas, Chris. He's from East Texas. He's not a bloody Canadian. I'm not sure. Well, I do know a few nice Canadians, I'll be fair. But what do you reckon of the Canadian scenario, actually? Because is that a worry, what's going on up there with Carney and fake conservatives?
Yeah, I think it's the inverse of Poland. They got their friendly guy, Mark Carney, in there,
Okay.
got him over the finish line. I
Yeah.
was really I don't know what to make of Pierre Polyev, or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
He seemed to be really willing to push back. He pushed back against the
Yes.
press and whatnot.
And
But
then,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, really
and
strange. Really, but this
mhm,
is the point we almost started with. Teddy, the power of the globalists is really, really strong. And I mean, in Canada, you've got a very controlled media, I guess, mainstream
mhm.
media anyway. And I don't know why he went. But anyway, if he's got a surname that's essentially unpronounceable unless you live in Quebec, he doesn't deserve
There you
that.
go.
Chris Davis, he doesn't deserve to be. Right. Although, mind you, Mark Carney, honest to goodness, I can't think of anyone worse. Like, he is absolutely he's actually the consummate globalist, actually, is in a way, Mark Carney.
Yeah, yeah. I joked on X after the election that they traded out a globalist commie for a globalist commie that was into international banking. So they really
Yeah.
stepped up there.
And hey, what could possibly go wrong with that? Hey, listen, we're coming towards the end of the show, but Teddy, I want to thank you very much. Can we just bring up Teddy's book, number one? There you go, Dethrone Davos, Save America. Good read, please. Support Teddy. Check it out, and also make sure you follow him over on X. I do like his style; he's very good, and this is I love. My own style is to be pretty much straight to the point, and that's why you've impressed me, Teddy. Your stuff doesn't miss the target which is absolutely brilliant. That's what we need, straight talkers in this world. And as I say, I hope everyone will do that. So look, folks, that's it from Teddy and myself for tonight. Thank you for being with us. Thank you if you're listening to this in replay, blah, 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 blah. And I'll be back with you guys later in the week. But from Teddy and myself, it's good night.